Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Nice to sit with you all for a moment. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Normally, we're talking about all kinds of smart buildings and solutions and these types of things, but we want to dive into the human side of these businesses and what's going on from a team perspective, what's going on from an employment perspective. So I'm really pleased to be joined by Zac Evans today. He works for Propel Recruitment, and they are all talking about, and they're working with all their clients on optimizing the workforce. And what we'd like to do today is talk about it from a prop tech perspective, what's going on in the prop tech space, but also from a real estate perspective, and how does real estate impact people's work and what makes them enjoy a space versus doesn't enjoy a space, what keeps somebody in their job, what actually drives them to maybe leave. So before I go any further, I'd love to bring Zac on stage. And Zac, let's start with who are you? What are you working on? What's keeping you busy over there at Propel?
Yeah, of course. No, thank you so much for the intro, Nicholas, and thank you for having me on. So, I guess a bit of background in terms of myself. I've been working in recruitment for kind of over 10 years now, all of which has been within the technology realms, with the majority of my personal focus within kind of prop tech, smart buildings, that side of things. And I think it's a really interesting time at the moment, and kind of looking forward to kind of delving into, obviously we've got some kind of topics to kind of talk about, but the AI piece and the shifts that we're kind of currently seeing in the market, as it is changing significantly at the moment. That being said, extremely busy across kind of the real estate and wider property tech space, really.
Well, and I'm reading a really interesting book right now called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read that one, but it's really fascinating because we need to make sure that we're busy with the right things, right? It's about busy in action or are actually quite different. What's actually propelling us forward and moving us forward and propelling us.
So,
There's your name. Already dropped it twice today. So that's pretty cool. But what's going on in the kind of the current landscape, right? Are companies hiring right now? Are they right sizing? Are they and what kind of roles do you see just on the ups at the moment?
yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, look, demand for good talent is still remains strong. I think we're seeing different pockets. So within kind of prop tech, we can and smart buildings, it's such a broad term. And I think in terms of the pockets, we're seeing a lot of growth within. It's the AI building management, the sustainability tech, is where we're seeing a lot of growth. And clients are kind of looking for that mix of software and those kind of the technology type skills, but also with that real estate. And I think the talent pool is somewhat still limited in comparison to some more established markets, to find those people that have both those experiences. And I think a lot of the work we do is with very early stage businesses. So often they want an extra thing, and that may be a founding member of a team or a kind of startup experience. So there's so many different kind of pieces to put to this jigsaw that different clients want for different reasons. And I think that's where someone like ourselves comes in. We work very closely across the passive market. So we're working with candidates that are typically doing very well in their current roles, typically kind of flying and aren't usually looking for another position, but can be tempted for the right role. And I suppose that's what it is. It's looking at the untapped candidate pool, and kind of pulling them out into the market. But in terms of the actual growth, I suppose the roles in which we're seeing a lot across commercial. So we're seeing a lot of commercial roles, and that's everything from the kind of junior level entry SDR type positions through to sales directors, CROs, and everything else in between. But as I say, they are typically looking for the two skills, and that being the tech and the software, AI, machine learning, that sort of things, and then that kind of real estate type side of things also.
So very much the business development role, communicating message to the market, and that makes complete sense, right? I think that the market is so saturated with messages at the moment that how do you break through that and actually get that sale done? And if you can get the right salesperson to sit in your team to drive that process, I mean, that sales is the number one important aspect to any business, right? Without it, it crumbles in a way. Do you see that role changing now with the emergence of AI and the things that are going on, or
Yeah,
how do you see that evolution?
really, yeah, it's a really interesting time. I think, especially kind of the commercial side of things, can you ever fully take the human touch away? I personally don't think so, and I think we're all going to be there to stay with AI supporting, streamlining, and optimizing everything we do. That being said, on the flip side, I've recently been speaking to a candidate, sales development, so more of that kind of junior entry level, and he's just been made redundant due to the company. They are going to be making all of their outbound with AI, so they're kind of making the whole of that entry level door openers, lead generators redundant, and it's all going to be focused around AI, and they're getting all of them to do all the lead generation for them. So it's interesting. I think the senior levels, I think we're going to be absolutely fine, but I think at that junior level there is some trepidation about exactly how that's going to look in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I can imagine your role right now is quite fluctuating. There's a lot of variability that's happening. And if you look at the tech side, where you actually have the developers who are building software and technology and these types of things, they also are under extreme pressure with the emergence of AI. Do you already see that, or are good programmers still, the cat's meow, as we would say sometimes?
Yeah, of course. Good programmers are always going to be required. I think. Well, I think they're always going to be required, especially when they've got that kind of sector specific skills, and obviously various different languages and whatever else that the client is going to require. That being said, again, I've been working with a client, and he started his whole business and founded it all coding through the likes of ChatGPT and using various different other AI tools, and he's created his own product. Had no kind of tech background, very commercially astute, but has managed to create an application by himself in his own bedroom using various different AI tools. So I don't think the good developers are gonna struggle in the foreseeable, but I think again it's those more junior roles where a lot of the donkey work can be done by AI. I think there could definitely be some movement there.
Well, and I think that's going to really kind of mess up the whole process, right? Because in order to become a senior developer, you once upon a time need to become a junior developer, right? And if you can't get in, then how can you move up the ladder to become a senior developer? So, do you see a bigger challenge now with the younger generation coming into the workforce, finding positions, getting in there, delivering, or yeah, what do you see there?
Yeah, so I don't think we're seeing it hugely right now. Do I see it happening in the next year or two? Yes, definitely. And I think the only way we can kind of bridge that gap is the educational piece. And exactly as you just said, Nicholas, how do we get those senior developers? How do we get those senior AEs, sales directors, whatever it may be, if we're not giving the kind of young people the chance right at the beginning, straight out of university? It's going to be nigh on impossible. Clients are asking for 10 years experience, and the other kind of mover isn't changing, so they aren't going to change their requirements in the kind of graduate market. But then the senior people, as they kind of go through their career and eventually retire, where is that gap? And I think it's all going to come down to training, but also that education piece when speaking to clients, and when you hear them pushing towards more AI and eradicating some more of that junior roles. It's about having that conversation with them and explaining that exact gap just there, really.
Yeah, so what is your recommendation to the market? Who needs to do that? Who's responsible for making sure that that younger generation keeps going? And I know that's a loaded question because it's a difficult challenge to solve.
Yeah, it really is. I think obviously we're seeing more and more kind of university. That's kind of a prerequisite at this point. I think everyone is starting to have degrees in kind of whatever it may be, and I think it's starting to stand out less and less. So I think it's about having that conversation with the candidates first of all, and trying to make them position themselves to be as attractive as possible to that potential hire. appreciate you haven't been in work. You may have done some bits at university, but there's so much more you can do at uni that employers are going to be looking for, whether that be kind of the extracurricular kind of, I've ran this social, I'm kind of the chairman of this society, whatever it may be. There's so much that candidates can add to their resume and add to their experience and they're kind of around the wider world, that will make them stand out, because ultimately everyone has a degree these days, and I think it's the candidates that have gone above and beyond that can make themselves more attractable to the employer. And I think from the employer perspective, it's explaining the skill gap, explaining what will happen if we continue to not hire at that junior level and trying to replace it with AI. Um, I think some companies have more flexibility than others. Look, some of these startup organizations, they've only got enough room for 1-2 heads, and the budgets are limited. So they need to get that senior person to come in. They don't have the flexibility, but then you work with some of the more bigger global players. There's no reason why they can't run kind of training days, assessment days to kind of get a cohort of commercially astute or technically astute, whichever side we're looking at on board, really.
Yeah, and if I had advice for the younger generation as well, I think it's about trying to quantify value always, right? And I think with the emergence of AI and with the ability for us to take mass data sets and truncate it down into analytics and clear insights, having a clear view on the ROI of your candidacy in an organization is critically important. I think always linking it back to the value that you're generating in the business is going to set you apart. And if we're just going in there to do activities and not necessarily drive impact, that's definitely going to be a challenge for younger generation. And when okay, so we've touched some on this emergence of AI. Are you seeing new roles emerge now that, the first time it was a little bit, wow, that's surprising or interesting, but you've seen it more and more often? And what are those new roles that companies are starting to hire for?
Yeah, of course. As you kind of mentioned, we did brush on some of that earlier, as they are now looking for the both sides of that, having that AI machine learning background alongside the real estate. I think historically they've been a little bit more open to that kind of more traditional kind of real estate, whether that kind of be building management, real estate operations, facilities management. Whereas now we're seeing the AI drive that now wants kind of people that have predictive analytics, IoT integration. It's starting to become more and more prevalent, and those skill sets aren't as much in the market as we kind of potentially want them to be, because it is new, and it is fast growing. So I think companies are starting to niche down in terms of what they want from, whether it be kind of commercial or that tech side of things. And I think it's about, again, if we go back to the education piece, it's about reminding companies that this is new, this is fresh, and ultimately to get the right people in, we are going to have to train, we are going to have to upskill them, and ultimately we can't have that candidate that ticks every single box every single time, because it's such a saturated market, as you kind of covered earlier. In terms of actual roles that we've seen, I think on the tech side, so there's a lot more tech roles which are more centered around the AI piece, whether it be kind of AI software engineers or kind of the development side. In terms of commercial, not seeing a huge amount in terms of new roles. It's just the requirements for these roles are changing, and they now want to have all of the pieces to that jigsaw with the AI, the real estate, and the commercial knowledge, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, wouldn't say brand new roles, but the roles have definitely changed.
Okay, so they're not new roles, but they're definitely wondering, how are you going to embed AI in what you already do and how you do it, and what tools are you using and these types of things.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, as I say, historically, they've been open to the traditional side of building management, real estate, etc. But it's now we actually want some of that and some of this, and ideally, if you've got kind of startup scale up experience, great. So there's just so many more factors to this process now.
And macro market at the moment, are we in a buyer market or a seller market? Are there more jobs than candidates, or are there more candidates than jobs at the moment?
Uh, Tricky one. I think there's definitely more jobs than qualified candidates. If we go back to that, if you want to tick every single box, there is not enough candidates out there. I think we're on a pretty even keel if we're ready to kind of open minds and push the boundaries in terms of what we can realistically achieve. So I think it's definitely the candidates are driving the market at the moment. Ultimately, the ones that have got all of that, all of the AI piece, the real estate piece, and people who have worked within this industry for a number of years, they are holding all the cards right now, because there's a finite number of them, and ultimately they know it. Um, but as I say, it doesn't have to be that way when speaking to clients. I think it's about, again, getting them to understand that there is people out there that could fit into this sector and could do the job very well. Yes, they don't tick all your boxes, but there are other people out there. So would say it's very much candidate driven, with the people that tick all the boxes, but I think there's ways to get around that, and I guess that's part of our job and where we kind of come in there.
Oh, that's really interesting. So when you look at those candidates and you say, okay, you don't tick all the boxes, which are the boxes that they should be out trying to acquire the skills for, and what are the yeah, how would you recommend them to get those boxes ticked?
Yeah, of course. So I think if we just talk about the kind of the prop tech market and the smart buildings, people are typically coming with the more traditional background, and I think the bit that they lack more so is the tech piece. I think there's hundreds of thousands of tech candidates out there, but what I'm really starting to find from kind of prop tech, contech, those kind of areas, they want someone that can speak the same language, someone that understands how this works. Rather than getting tech people from a completely different industry, I think what we're looking to do is get people from industry and teach them tech. So for those candidates that are looking to migrate into the tech realms, doing as much as you can around that. I mean, there's numerous free courses online, kind of tech, AI, whatever it may be, to kind of broaden your horizon as much as possible. Is going to be the way to kind of, yeah, look attractive to these clients.
Yeah, I think if we look in the prop tech space, smart building space, everything till now has very much operated in silos of each other. And that's extremely challenging because real estate speaks a completely different language than tech. So I think what you're recommending of let's bring industry people into tech rather than vice versa makes a lot of sense because I think real estate in the end is about real estate and it's about the process and about the program to optimize real estate. So a pure tech play is a little bit more challenging in that regard. When
So
we look at retention, what is driving the candidate at this moment for the job where they say yes, or what is keeping them there that says they're not willing to leave the job? Is it a pure money numbers game, or what are the factors that are playing at the moment?
no, I think it's really not just a pure numbers game anymore, right? I do a lot of work within commercial recruitment, so you'd think salespeople, hungry, money motivated, that's their only driver. It's really not anymore. And I think there's so many different elements that are building up the overall package now, and what candidates are considering. I think we can look at anything from the culture piece. Are you listening to your employers? Do they feel valued? Is there clear progression places in plan? Are you running regular training programs? Are you consistently upskilling your candidates and the people in your team? Obviously, salary is still a huge driver, but there's so many other things in terms of kind of bonuses, commission schemes, flexibility, kind of hybrid working. Are you going to be asking your candidates to come in 5 days a week? If you are, you're going to limit your candidate pool hugely. On the flip side, there's a number of candidates now that have had enough of fully remote. They want to be in the office a couple of days a week. So that there's just so much there that candidates are looking for. Again, there's also the sustainability piece. Candidates have the real estate and the prop tech background, but they want to do their bit for the world and their bit for good. So sustainability, that side of things is also a kind of massive pull for these candidates. They kind of feel like they're doing their kind of bit, and I guess the stage of the business as well. There's a lot of candidates that want to be in. seed, Series A, Series B clients. They can kind of really make their stamp and fly and grow with them. So there's just so many variables at the moment, and I think that's why we do so well at the untapped market. The candidates aren't actively applying because we can take these positions out to market and position them in the most attractive way as possible.
So how are companies doing in your view of the ones that you're kind of working with in that total spectrum, and what are the top, let's say, three where companies should really be focusing their attention to make sure they're doing it right and for candidates to be asking questions about?
Yeah, of course. Growth and progression. People want a clear progression scheme. It's all well and good coming into roles and saying you're going to be, for example, an SDR for the next 18 months, and then 2 years down the line, you're still doing the same role. We need to have clear progression plans in place. And that's everything down to the finite figures. If it's a sales role, we need you to hit X number and we can do that promotion. There seems to be a lot of companies where candidates have those frustrations, is companies that perhaps dangle the carrot and then don't follow through on the promises that they've made. That's definitely one. I think package, it's always huge, and I think there's not just basic salary. There's so many with the rise of kind of startups and scale ups. Share options are now more prevalent than ever. So the share package that's on offer, the bonus and commission schemes that are on offer as well, and then also just the flexibility. So that can be anything from the office location, is it kind of remote, hybrid, or kind of the opportunity to work fully remotely, kind of 1 month a year. There's so many different variables that companies are now trying to pull in to make their position more attractive than others.
It's really fascinating, and definitely that succession planning and career progression piece is really really tough. I've worked in the corporate sectors in that exact role in the past, and business is changing so quickly that it's hard to know exactly where your business is going to be 2-3 years from now. So it's also difficult to know what the positions are. So how are you kind of advising companies to deal with that very quick change in business that causes your organization to need to be changed in shape and size often?
Sorry, could you repeat that one?
So how are you helping companies kind of with that career progression piece, which you were just
Yeah,
saying? It
yeah,
makes
yeah.
complete sense that people want a bit of certainty of how they're going to progress in their career and the things that they're doing. But on the flip side, for organizations, that's quite difficult to do because business is changing so quickly. So how do you advise companies to do that with such a fast-paced change to business at this moment?
We'll sit down and map out the market, as I say. We'll work with them. We've created progression plans for organizations, and we'll work closely with them. I appreciate things do change, and these things can't always be followed through on, but I don't think there's any reason why we can't still have them in place, and we can't put them in place with the proviso, if all goes well and if everything is still in the same place, you will be progressed. I don't believe there's so much change in the space of 6 months to a year that progression piece is suddenly not there.
Mhm.
We're not talking 10-year progression plan. We're talking kind of some short, sharp. Whether it can be anything from it doesn't have to be a big title change. It doesn't have to be yeah, you're now moving into a closing role. It can be as simple as a pay review. Kind of now we're going to look at kind of bringing in various different kind of benefits, whatever it may be. It's not just the title change. So I don't believe that companies can't put in progression plans. I appreciate they move quickly, but I think that there's no reason that they can't do that. And I think managing candidates' expectations throughout, so that they are a startup, they are moving quickly. There's lots of fast moving parts. Things are going to be different in a year's time, but if all goes well, you should be there.
Well, and I think it's a philosophy, if more than anything. And if you look at happiness and where happiness comes from, it comes from progress, it comes from growth, it comes from moving forward. So as long as you're helping your people feel that progression, then I think you're
Yeah,
on the right
exactly
track.
that. And I think the retention piece as well, it's down to listening to your employees as well. I think there's a lot of companies that just get blindsided by all these fantastic different benefits and perks that other companies are using. But have you looked internally and asked your members of staff what they want? If you've got a single parent with two kids, and childcare to them is going to be great. Maternity, paternity leave, great. If you've got a single guy 20 years old that has no plans of having children or anything time soon, is a paternity plan going to be attractive to him? Is childcare going to be attractive to him? Probably not. Is flexibility to him? Yes. So there's, I think we just need to have those pretty frank conversations with both external candidates that are interested in the role, but also the people that are already there, and working benefits and packages around the person, rather than just a blanket kind of uniform approach.
Love that. Love that. And I want to touch on the office then, because I think with smart buildings, we're always looking for how to optimize office environments using tech, using the very things that we're selling. We're also trying to put that into offices. How do you see that playing at the moment in people's desire for work? And is office a showstopper in some regards? And are you seeing more, hybrid or fully back to office? What are companies doing there?
Yeah, of course. I think for me, hybrid is here to stay, and I think it really feels like the right balance. Where we have seen struggles is clients that are driving back to 5 days a week in the office. We've seen mass exodus. That we've seen a lot of people that have decided to no, no, thank you. I'm not going to going back to 5 days remote, especially when they've been 5 days in the office. Sorry, especially when they've been performing historically. It's hard to explain to a candidate that's been doing fine at home why they suddenly need to come and pay for a train every day, sit on a train for 2 hours, come into an office where they're probably going to get less done. But at the same time, we are seeing candidates starting pushing away from the fully remote. We are starting to see candidates that want that face-to-face interaction, which especially, I think, especially in the kind of commercial realms. I think sitting in the four corners of your own bedroom doing sales for 5 days a week, hammering the phone, it's not good for anyone. I think get out there, kind of meet with colleagues, bounce ideas from each other, and everything else. So I think hybrid is the happy medium in my eyes. That being said, appreciate for the kind of more startup scale ups that don't have that entity within whatever region we're placing that candidate in. We work on a lot of founding type roles, so the first on the ground for that region. You can't have them in the office, fine, but there's no reason why we can't be having regular face-to-face meetups. Nothing replaces for me the face-to-face contact. Yes, Zoom video calls and everything else are great, but kind of sitting down and having that kind of conversation with colleagues is never gonna change for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the office is so interesting because on one side there's this level of observance and looking at how people work and getting a feel for that. So I feel like that's something that the younger generation is definitely missing out on with all of this working from home and whatever. But I also think that where the mandates of back to work 5 days or back to office 5 days, where it's getting wrong is I think you're right. I think people want to come back to the office. I think they want to interact with people. They want to have that social and collaborative experience. They just don't want to be told that they have to do that or be forced to do that. And I loved Spotify's ad that said, "We trust our people and we'll stay hybrid." Right?
Yeah, and it is exactly that. It's that trust piece. It's I've been doing this job fine for the last 2 years during COVID, whatever it was. Why am I now getting forced to come back into the office 5 days? But it's that happy medium, and I think it's explaining that to some of the more junior candidates as well. You wouldn't believe the candidates that we speak to. Sometimes they've been out of university a year, they've had a year's experience, and now they're dictating they want fully remote only, and that's all they're going to look at. And it's, hang on a minute, I think for kind of more senior members of staff that might want to just sit and work remotely, especially the kind of engineers, developers, etc., might get more done at home when you're at that senior level. But as you say, at that junior level, it's about coming in and observing how people are working, and learning and growing and having that kind of conversation, the kind of having a conversation at the kind of water cooler and how's your day going? What are you doing different to what I'm doing? The younger generation have got so much to learn in that sense, but a lot of them are still dictating that fully remote, and I
Interesting.
think it's that educational piece for them also.
That's really interesting that they're really pushing for that. Um, and what do you think the reason for that? If you're, you know, what's the reason for pushing for that remote only?
Uh, yeah, I don't want to kind of blanket everyone. It's definitely not all, but it's a lot, and I think we're going to looking back to COVID. A lot of them have done full university courses while kind of they've gained degrees while being remote. So I think they believe that, look, I can do it as a degree. Why can't I do it in the workplace? And two very, very different things. One's very much about self-learning and self-development, and you can do that pretty remotely with kind of obviously help from professors or whatever else. But work environment is completely different. It's about collaboration. It's about learning and growing, but with the team and the company. And I don't feel like you can get enough out of the culture and the business if you're just going to be work solely remotely, really.
Well, as an employer myself, you know, it's about value. So if the person can work remotely and deliver value, fantastic. But if they're still in that learning process and we're growing towards being able to deliver value, then there's a disconnect there. Then we need to spend more time together. We need to work together in order to get that person up to that level of delivery,
Yeah,
right? So I think that um, yeah, it's interesting, but I think growth is painful, and a lot of that office time where you're observing people and you're experiencing that stuff as a younger person can be quite challenging and can be quite painful at times. So I do understand the desire to avoid pain.
definitely.
Yeah. Oh, so what does the future look like if we look at, you know, a year from now, 12 to 18 months? What are the key trends that you're seeing playing? Are the things that you think will continue, and what will change?
Yeah, of course. The job market is evolving dramatically day to day, let alone kind of 6 months, 12 months down the line. So I think kind of highlighting some of the kind of top line things where we are seeing where how it is evolving is the tech integration, as we kind of mentioned, the AI piece. Is it going to replace jobs wholesale? No, but you need to get on board with it because ultimately it's going to reshape your job and how you do your job. Um, Not take it away, but it is going to help you streamline and leverage different kind of aspects to your position. And I think you need to kind of get on board with it. Otherwise, it's going to leave you behind. The sustainability piece, that's huge. We are starting to see more and more organizations that are looking for people that have that background within sustainability, ESG, whatever that may be, because ultimately it's no longer an optional thing, kind of these environmental considerations. They're becoming kind of core business strategies for organizations. So we're seeing a huge amount of growth within that space. So not only now we need to have the technology piece and kind of a real estate background, but also have they got some kind of sustainability knowledge? Do they know about kind of ESG and kind of the programs and stuff behind that? So that's where I see another huge surge in terms of that side of things, in terms of the different emerging sectors. And then I think we're just going to be, as we kind of highlighted earlier, is that skill gap piece. It's still going to be educating both clients and candidates about how candidates can make themselves attractive to the right employers, but also how employers can be as flexible as possible to attract those people. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting time. But I'm definitely here for the journey and looking forward to it, to be honest. But yeah, it's that tech piece as we kind of discussed. It's going to be a huge kind of growth for them.
Interesting. And I mean, if you look at 2024, I think 2024 was just this massive ESG push, right? Because there's all kinds of stuff happening in the sustainability sector. We're now moving into second quarter 2025. Do you see that momentum continuing indeed?
Yeah, I haven't seen any slowdown at all. I think I could probably, yeah, I could name on the top of my head 4 or 5 firms that we're working with at the moment, all of which want the same background in terms of real estate and ESG. I haven't seen it slow down anytime soon. I'm sure it will eventually kind of plateau, but no, the ESG surge is very much remaining, growing, and yeah, I can't see it slowing down anytime soon.
That's wonderful to hear, because I think a more sustainable future is what we should all be striving for. And prop tech and smart building technology can definitely aid in that process. Zach, thank you so much for your time, your energy, and we're excited to have you part of the collective, and to be working together to try and help all of our different partners and companies, right size, grow, look at their strategies around their people, looking at the roles, looking at how those roles are changing. So watch this space. We're going to keep coming back with new insights around the human side of business.
Brilliant. No, thank you ever so much for your time, Nicholas. Really appreciate you having me on, and yeah, look forward to working more closely with you and yeah, the rest of the collective, really.
Fantastic.